Welcome to the Someone Gets Me podcast, where you'll hear stories of inspiration and hope realized. Hosted by Dianne Allen, intuitive empowerment mentor who specializes in working with people who want to be freed from being stuck in life. You will hear personal stories and professional insights, along with tips on how to conquer overthinking, procrastination, and more. Here's Dianne.
Hey everybody, it's Dianne, and we have a great show for you planned today at Someone Gets Me. I have a guest with you that you missed her first interview with me that was off the chart amazing. In fact, everybody except the two of us missed it because as it was rendering, the power went out and the whole thing got lost. Oh, I was so disappointed because it was a great interview. And so after a couple months of schedule juggling, Sheryl and I have been able to come back together to give you round two, but it's really round one. Feels like round two. Anyway, it's very exciting. Sheryl Nicholson is one of the first people who really befriended me and acted in an amazing, gracious way when I first joined the business community in this area many years ago. We have been friends ever since, and her style and her professionalism and who she is as a person and a businesswoman is absolutely amazing. Now, I'm not reading this all off of her bio. Her bio will be in the show notes. I'm telling you this from my heart because it's the truth. She's a certified professional speaker, meaning she has done it all. She's been in other countries. She's spoken to just about every kind of group you can think of. And she can share compelling information and things you really want to know about in a way that's really easy to hear. She's a podcaster as well, and she has a great podcast called Get a Life Balanced. And I binged listened to most of it on Saturday because I love listening to it. I listen to it over and over because she gives clear, concise, really cool help and tips. And she tells the most amazing fun stories with it about her amazing family and other things. So I love to listen to her podcast, and I'll make sure a link to that's in the show notes for you. So you will want to listen to it too. So I could go on and on about Sheryl, but I think what we should do now is welcome her to the show, and then we can get started with this amazing interview. So welcome, Sheryl.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here, Dianne.
This is such a fun thing, is having you here on Someone Gets Me, because, you know, we've had discussions before about not being heard or not being understood and still finding a way to live our passion and our mission. So I'd like to start out a little bit with you having the opportunity to share a little bit about your journey. You have an amazing journey as a human being, right? You have an amazing family and all of that. And whatever comes to mind that you would like to share about who is Sheryl Nicholson anyway.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm a plumber's daughter, for one thing. My dad was a plumber, and I was blessed. I was the only daughter, and I was the firstborn. So he sort of treated me like a guy, I guess, which was kind of nice. I don't ever remember him complimenting me on any kind of clothing or thought I looked cute or anything like that. But he would take me along on fishing trips when my brothers didn't go. He's the one who taught me how to change the oil in the car, to change flat tires. And so I guess unknowingly, he gave me a lot of kind of like that male confidence. So it really was a blessing. Back then, little girls could not play sports, and he was a little league coach. So I was blessed that he would take me across the street to Ballast Point Elementary School, and we would practice on the school grounds. And I was the ball girl, I would have to pick up all the equipment. But when the guys would leave, then he'd throw me the high flies, and he'd let me pitch, and he'd let me catch the ball. And so I think that really is a gift that he didn't realize I had, and I didn't realize I had till I got much older, on why I guess people didn't get me, because I had that blending of the male and the female parts in me with confidence, and nobody sort of knew where that came from.
And probably they didn't know what to do with that either, because here's a girl acting strong and confident and not just prissy, so to speak, you know?
Exactly. And, you know, even now as a professional speaker and speaking for, you know, over 20 years, people will assume, they'll say, oh, well, you're a female speaker speaking to the female audience. No, I've never really spoken to the female audience. I've never targeted that group or that industry, because I learned really quickly it was still the men. Most of them were men who were CEOs of companies. They knew what kind of results they wanted, and I knew how to give them the results they wanted. I was very bottom line oriented, get to the point and make it happen. And that's how I built my business. So it really turned out to be a real blessing for me all the way through.
Oh, that's really neat, because you learned how to negotiate a system that most women couldn't even negotiate, thanks to your dad teaching you all these skills through Little League and other things.
Yeah. Right? Absolutely. And then when I got older and I got married and the marriage didn't work, and I was a single mom raising 4 kids, and I started my own business, I'm the one that I couldn't call somebody if, I was in really crummy rental homes, and because I didn't have, quote, a job that I could qualify for a loan. So I would rent these horrible little houses, but I learned how to lay tile. I learned how to hang sheetrock. I learned how to set tubs and toilets. And so again, that confidence as a little kid, you just realized, hey, you pull your pants up, it's between you and me, and let's get the job done. So it's paid off all the way through, personally and professionally.
That's so neat. And I'm sure you passed on a lot of that ethics and creativity to your children, and you have lots of grandchildren too, don't you?
I do. I now have a dozen. And instead of calling them the dirty dozen, I call them the delightful dozen. So yes, I have a dozen grandkids, and I'm blessed. The furthest one lives 2.5 hours away. So I'm all about balancing your life, and you have to, you work, but the most important people in the life are the people that you chose to put into your life. And so you have to leave a legacy and really give them not just quality time. That's kind of misnomer. We get fed that stuff, that, well, it's not how much time, it's quality time. That's not true. You have to be so alert to take advantage of any time that comes up. You can't just say, well, on Tuesday from 6 to 9, I'll be spending time with my child. If you're at the grocery store and they see a disabled child or a situation that they have questions about, that's a learning opportunity. And you have to be ready and able to turn that into a quality opportunity with the little people in your life.
Yes, I think that's an important point. I see so many people missing those quality moments or those teaching moments because it's not in the schedule, or it's not the structured homework time, or whatever it is, when really all of it is designed to be quality time in a way where we can build that kind of relationship and have learn confidence. That's how the kids learn the confidence, is attention from parents and the big people around them.
Yeah, and I'm a believer that kids need you when they fit in your arms, and then when they're 6 inches taller than you. I mean, they're going to need you for the rest of your life to lead them, to have influence and be able to lead them. I don't think you're ever, to me, the only thing I'm worried about getting older is not having influence. I go to some of these places where there's older residents, especially in Florida, and you see these people, and all they're talking about is their ailments, or what medication they're on, or what they're going to have for dinner when they just had lunch, and I want to be able to still be relevant with what's happening with today, and still be in tune with my kids, however old they are, to be able to have something of wisdom and something relevant to share with them, so that they still value that,
Oh, I think that will happen. You're reminding me of my great Aunt Madeline, and she was my best friend's aunt, but I call her Aunt Madeline, and she kind of adopted me, and she lived in a high rise down in North Hollywood Beach, and we would drive down. I was in graduate school, my friend was in law school. We would drive down there for our weekends with Aunt Madeline, and we'd run out on the balcony and hear the Atlantic, and she would have us bring our textbooks, and she would go through them because she was on the admission board for Brandeis University up into her 80s, and she would say, well, this one's good, dear. Your teacher needs to fix this one in one weekend. And Aunt Madeline and I went on some cruises because her friend passed away who cruised with her, and she's like in her 80s, and she asked me to go, and I went with her, and she would look at people much younger than her and go, I'm never going to be that old.
Yeah.
And until she finally passed away, within a couple weeks of that time, she was
Wow.
very active and really, really amazing, and a big influence on everybody and everything, because she decided to. I think that when we decide to do that, her greatest pain was some of the people my generation, and the younger ones, didn't really pay any attention to it. Like, they didn't really want to go traveling with her or spend time listening to her stories. And I really loved them.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's so valuable because there's so much wisdom there. We went, when one of the cruises we went on was, we were in the front of the Statue of Liberty as the sun was coming up, and they turned all the engines off. These were cruise ships that only held like 80 people.
Wow.
Very nice. Turned all the engines off, so it was completely silent.
Wow.
And then they put on God Bless America.
Oh.
And everybody's eyes are weeping, and we're all up there. And it was like unbelievable, right?
Yes.
Almost nobody on that ship was born in the U.S. Most of them she was a Russian immigrant Jew. All people from other places, and telling the stories of their families coming through Ellis Island, or telling the stories of them doing it.
Wow.
How they all got here. I'm getting goosebumps now, many years
I know, me too. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And then she apologized that there were no younger people on the boat. I'm like, what do you mean? This is the most amazing thing for me, to be with people in that space. And we spent the whole cruise just talking about all kinds of amazing, amazing things. And without her, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. It was amazing.
I think that's what's really great about your podcast, about, Somebody Gets Me, because she valued you because you got her. And I think that's it. It has nothing to do with age. It's seeking out similar people who value the air that they take in, who value the sun that comes up, who knows they have value and they want to contribute to somebody or something. And it's interesting, but we do get to find those people.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, found her. Yeah.
And she got me, and I got her in that cool way, and age had nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
Right. I think, to your point, I think you'll always have a level of relevance because that's who you are. And the legacy will definitely go on because it's your intention to.
Yeah, for sure. I got a call today. It was so sweet. My grandson was applying for his very first job, and he's always been just a little bit different. When he was born, he had kind of tactile issues. Like if you put him in a t-shirt, he would pull it down to his wrist. He had to have long sleeve clothes on. He'd put his hands over music. He couldn't hear music. He'd walk backwards when he was stressed. He just had some different things about him. And so he's not the typical kid. I can remember at 3 years old, I'd go over there and visit, and I told my daughter, you need to buy stock and Scotch tape, because I would go over there and he would have built an elephant with construction paper and Scotch tape, and it was a 3D elephant, at 3 years old. He made himself a Santa costume out of red construction paper and cotton balls when he was 4 years old in Scotch tape. Well, now he's getting his first, quote, job in at the theater, and he asked me if I would pre-interview him. So he came over the weekend, and I pre-interviewed him, and I said, now this is the trick question you're going to get asked. At the end of the interview, they're going to ask you, is there anything else that you need to say before we close this interview? And I said, what would you say? And he'd say, nope. And I go, oh, no, that's the wrong answer. They're waiting to see if you're just going to be passive, if you're going to be assertive. So this is what you say instead. You say, yes, I just want you to know I'm looking forward to the opportunity of sharing my talent with this company. And could you tell me when you're ready to make a decision, when you'll be ready to make the decision? So we practiced that about 3 times. Well, he called me an hour ago and he said, Gigi, and I said, yes, I got the job. And he said, that question you told me, that trick question? I said, yeah. He said, they asked me that question. And I said, and what did you say? And he said, I said exactly what you said. And I said, what happened? And he said, the woman said, well, as a matter of fact, I think I've already made my decision. You're hired. So isn't that great?
Oh my word, that's amazing. I love it. And that story will be there for him forever when he tells his kids and on and on and on about how he went to you and you were available and you helped him with the thing they were looking for because you knew the answer.
Yep.
That's brilliant.
Yep. I got him.
You understand him and you know
Yep.
the rules of the business world. So you were able to help him. It's cool that he called you. That's neat.
Yeah, it was cool.
And so you're in my book, Daily Meditations for Visionary Leaders. And I invited you to be in the book because I see you as a visionary leader. And I make the point in the Daily Meditations for Visionary Leaders book that all the visionary leaders are not dead, that we have thinkers who are around us now in the world, and you're one of them.
Thank you.
And so I'm really happy you're in the book. So I hope that people will, if they don't already have the book, get the book and see the neat quotes you have in there. In fact, I think I have you in there more frequently than other guests that I had in the book, because I think what you share is so valuable.
Thank you. And I have it right by my bedside table. I enjoy reading it, and I definitely recommend it at every seminar that I do. I think it's a great book. You did awesome on that one, Diane.
Thank you so much. It's funny because just the other day, about a week ago, I guess I was on LinkedIn, and that day and then the next day, 2 days in a row, I was going on LinkedIn, and then on my news feed was a picture of one of the pages in my book.
Oh, how cool.
From different people that I've never met.
Oh, I love that.
I'm reading this book and it's an amazing book. And it was the same page.
Wow.
Two different people, different parts of my connections and everything. And it was the page about purpose, about life purpose, where I say live on purpose with a purpose.
Yes. And
so it was very interesting. And so it's really neat to see people who I don't know, they didn't buy it just because they like me or whatever. They bought it because they called to them, and they're so moved that they're sharing it with other people. So
that's awesome.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
That was really fun. So you also have written other things, and you have your podcast, and you're this great content creator, your YouTube channel. You just go and go and go, and you create talks and everything. You have a level of creativity that's amazing, right? So what I'd like you to speak to is, have you ever had a time where your creative juices were kind of like coming in so fast that they almost got jumbled up, or you couldn't get to it fast enough, or like overwhelmed, or so many things going on that you didn't know how to pick, because a lot of the people listening to this podcast have a hard time, some with overthinking where it jams them up, but some with that kind of like, I have all these amazing visions and I don't know how to make it happen. And that frustration of not making it happen when there's so many great creative ideas. So I'm wondering if you've ever had that challenge, and if you have, what kind of tip you might share, or tips with people about how to kind of dial up from big vision into something that they can actually do something with and feel good about it.
Wow, that is a great question. And that gets me back to, I think one of my faults, maybe, it's sort of like a blessing, but in a way it's a fault, is that I'm sometimes ahead of my time. Like I see, I'm very solution oriented. I see a solution to a problem, and then I want to figure out how can I make that solution viable, and then how can I bring that to the market. So for a perfect example, I took a simple idea. I like keeping things simple. I had a simple idea. I didn't know how to make it work because I wasn't technology savvy. And then, so to answer your question, here's one of the things you have to do. With all of your ideas, you have to get feedback from other people, especially if you want it to be financially successful. You have to ask yourself two questions. What's the worst thing that can happen? So can you live with the worst thing? Like if you're making a big investment, it's out of your own pocket, and if that thing does not survive, are you going to lose your house over it? Then that's probably not a good choice, okay? Are you going to lose your health over it? Are you going to lose your spouse over it? Not a good choice. For me, when I had this idea, I talked to my clients. I have an idea about this. And I'll just tell you what the idea was. I believe that employees are brilliant. I believe customers are brilliant. And I believe company presidents don't have a clue how to tap into that brain trust. And so I thought, okay, there's got to be a way that employees and customers could get the president's ear without it being stopped at the departmental level or the location level. So how's that going to happen? Well, this is back in 2000, okay, when technology was just getting started. I'll create a website. So I went around and I asked people about that. I asked my company presidents about it. They were like, I sign up. I want that information. I want that information. And then it snowballed. Here I thought I had a simple idea. It snowballed out of control. Then I had to learn about SEC laws. I had to learn about how to raise money. I raised $300,000. I had to find out about a financial analyst on what it was worth. My point in that is, when you have a lot of ideas, you have to be around other people who have more expertise than you do, so they can tell you whether it's a good idea or not, and whether it's a viable idea. It turned out that the company was worth $6.5 million, and we were off and running, and then the bottom fell out of the stock market. And if you said technology stock, everybody ran the other way. So it got tabled. I had to call my investors and tell them, we're not going to be up and running. You're not going to get your money back. And what was amazing is they all said, it's okay. We knew we were taking a risk, but what we loved about you is you told us what we were investing in, and nobody else who we invested with did. So, hey, it's okay. And when you get another project, come knock on our door. So I hope that's not too much information for your listeners, but my point being, when you get an idea, get input from other people to find out if it's a viable idea. Ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen if it doesn't happen? And then if it does, put people around you that are passionate, but also contribute to that success. You don't want to connect people who just want a free ride. You want people who are bringing their talent in with yours, so that everything is mutually beneficial. It was a great ride. It was a great fun. One of my sons is a patent attorney. He helped me patent the whole thing. And then here we are now in 2019, and nobody has taken that idea. They're doing surveys and other things. And I asked him, hey, do you have anything like that now? And he said, Mom, I hate to tell you, but they just sold a company that's very similar. Not exactly like yours, but just sold it for $22 billion. I was like, ah! But I was ahead of my time. So sometimes our ideas are just a little bit ahead of our time.
I think that's really true. I know that if I'm coming up with a good idea, I have to wait a few years before the rest of the world catches up with me.
Yes, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. One of my sons is a chef, and so he peels potatoes instead of a potato peeler, he peels it with a cheese cutter, right? So when my patent attorney son saw that, he ran to his office, and he's on the computer looking to see if there's a patent for that cheese cutter to cut potatoes. And there were already 22 other cheese cutter potato peelers out there, but nobody had brought it to market. So again, you think you're ahead of your time. You might have an idea, but you got to sit on it until somebody brings it to market. Has that financial backing.
Right. So it's all about timing.
It is.
And really paying attention to the feedback of the world, because the truth is a lot of us that are visionaries or have that ability to see all kinds of creative things are ahead of our time and ahead of the time of whatever like the pace of the culture is. And sometimes it moves quickly and sometimes not so quickly, and depends on the area. So I think that's very sage advice. Actually, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Something else I would tell them that, because you know how practical I am, get a book, a beautiful multicolored spiral notebook, and any of your ideas. Here's the wonderful thing about ideas. I was speaking to a group of inventors council. And what I thought was so funny is these inventors, they get an idea, but then they keep it close to their chest, and they wonder why it doesn't go anywhere, because they have so much fear that someone's going to steal their idea. If you put your ideas into one book, what I find is you don't top off creativity. Look how many books you've written. It just inspires you to write another one and write another one. So when you get one creative thought, it'll inspire you to get a second and a third and a fourth. And if you keep it in a book and you write down the date, then if by some chance someone takes an idea, you have documentation with a date on it of when you've actually thought and created this. And you can do things with that. That's happened in our family. It's a reality.
Yep, that's true. And the more I write and the more I create, the more ideas come. It keeps the flow going. It's like the Dead Sea. If you don't have any output, it becomes uninhabitable. And I think that for all of us, keeping it going, keeping the flow going, whether it's keeping a book, I have a couple different journals I keep my ideas in, and I have a couple folders on my computer. So no matter where I am, there's a spot for me to put whatever ideas I have.
I have a question for you. Have you ever gone through a stage where the creativity stopped?
Oh, yes.
And then what have you done that that to me is frightening. I've had that too. And that's frightening. So what did you do to get those juices flowing again?
Well, the first thing I did is I imagined myself like I was surfing, and all of a sudden it got calm. Instead, there's no waves to surf, but I'm out there on my surfboard. So I gave myself permission to breathe and relax a little bit and just say, okay, just like the seasons, the winter is the time to rest, so spring can show up, and spring's my favorite season. So it was hard, but I kept reminding myself of those kind of metaphors to just kind of stay in the flow of it all. And in the beginning, I tried to force it and make myself write so much and do so much, and that only made it worse. So after about 3 or 4 days of that, I gave that up, and I said, okay, I'm going to give myself permission to not create another thing ever. Knowing I would, but just whatever. I'm willing to let it all go, and I'm willing to just be and see what happens. And probably it was about a month later, maybe 3 weeks, where all of a sudden I woke up with an idea, and I could tell that my creativity was back awake again, because I'm like, oh, I have to write that down. And I hadn't felt that way in several weeks. At first, it was kind of depressing, and I was a little bit dejected, kind of defeated, and is all the creativity I thought I had really real, and doubting and things. And then once I sat with it for a minute and allowed myself to just be in the rhythm, when I'm in the rhythm, because there have been other times where my creativity went down since then. That was years ago. But now when it goes to that space, I just go, oh, okay, well, I'm just not going to be writing as much now. That's all right. I'll do other things, or I'll quilt, or I'll do something else and shift it up, and then let something else prime the pump, so to speak.
Good.
And then that helps it. But I think it all ebbs and flows. I think we live on a sine wave. Everybody, I get somebody the other day goes, sine wave? That doesn't make sense. I said, yeah, it does. It's up and down. Everything is up and down. Everything has a season, and life is meant to be that way. So when we live in a culture that says you have to be flatline, the same, always feeling good or always feeling bad, or don't have any mood swings or whatever, that's missing the whole beauty of life. If I didn't have a time where I had no creativity, I would never be able to appreciate the amazing creativity I actually.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah. And it's fun. Like even this podcast to me is creative, because I'm asking neat questions. I'm 100% using my intuition on all of my interviews. No two of them are the same. And when I started this podcast almost 2 years ago now, I never thought it was ever going to have an interview on it. It was never in the plan. It all started because somebody asked to be on the show, and I thought, oh, okay, well, I can do an interview. I didn't even think much about it. And now I still do solo episodes. I just did one on empathic distress disorder. That I just coined that phrase to help my empaths. That's going to air right before this. And so I'm like, okay, I can still do single ones, and I can mix it up, and it makes it even more fun. So it's actually expanding my creativity beyond what I expected.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, it's fun. I want to talk a little bit with you about something that you really believe in that I think is so critical these days. And a lot of people who are very impulsive and very distracted can easily miss the point. And that is the ability and the art of being consistent. How consistency is something that's required for long-term success. I know you believe in that, and I know you practice that. And so I would like to talk a little bit about consistency and how consistency can really support us. I think when we don't feel understood, or we feel kind of harried or distracted, consistency can be the great antidote to stop the fragmentation, so that we can begin to then kind of get a rhythm for our life, right? And a balance for it.
Yeah.
And so what would you say to somebody who's having a hard time getting their consistency going in whatever area of how to get it started? Like, okay, like I'm distracted all the time and I can't get anything done even though I want to. What would be some ways to begin to start gaining ground on being more consistent to kind of get the ball rolling?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm thinking, what do I do? I'm still a paper girl, paper and pencil girl. So for me, it's important to write things down. I'm still visual. So I have all these pieces of paper, I call them touchstones. And there's sayings of mine, because I believe, like you, that there's smart people living today. So one of my taglines is, hire Sheryl Nicholson, she doesn't quote dead people. Because I think you are totally wise. And if I spend some time with myself, surely I can think of something wise to say after all the things that I've experienced. So I have those kinds of things around my office, sort of like wallpaper around the top of my office, like a wallpaper border. But what I would do with a paper and pencil is write down something that I want to do and then why that's important to me. Not necessarily monetarily, but let's say I want to do something consistent. Why do I want to do it? What's the benefit to me? Am I going to feel better physically? Is it going to help me mentally? And when I'm consistent with something, if it doesn't feed my soul, if it doesn't make my life better, then I'm going to let it go and find something else that I can tie the talent to. But I'm not going to let it go immediately. I'm going to there's certain underlying values that you have to tie to what you're doing so that it keeps you on the path of consistency. So for example, I value authenticity. That's a core value of mine. So if I connect to anything, it has to be authentic. If it's not authentic, if I'm around people that are playing games, if I'm around people that are gossipy, if I'm around people who can't open themselves up and be real, then I'm not going to consistently hang out with those people. I'm going to consistently find something I can do that nurtures that value that I have. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
So writing those things down on paper and putting it on the wall visually, I need that visual reminder, because in the busyness of life, I'm running here, I'm running there, a crisis happens, you can get sick, somebody else needs you, a client is angry. You have all these other things, but I need to go back and anchor at that piece of paper that's on my wall so I can take a breath and go, oh, this is what I'm consistently doing. This is where my purpose is. This is what I value. And that has helped me a lot. So I'm still a paper pencil girl.
Well, and I think it's a very important point that you bring up, that the consistency is from the inside out, that the consistency is in the values and in what is important and how you conduct yourself, that you're not giving the power to being consistent only on the outside.
Exactly.
And I think that that's a very important point, because consistency does happen from the inside out. If we're trying to do any behavior, like whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is. If we're not doing it from the inside, from our values, it's never going to hold, because the outside only, that external only, doesn't have any anchor within us as far as who we are. And so I really like what you said about that, like the paper of the neat sayings and the things, like I have them all over my house. I not only have sayings, I have things, I have items that either somebody gave me or that I think are fun. Like I have this pencil or a pen that lights up that has a pink flamingo on it. And so if I have to write something that's hard, I make the flamingo walk and jump and I can play while I'm doing it or whatever. But yeah, I have things that have meaning to me from my inside values, which then allows that to translate into consistent behavior. And that's what I hear you saying, right?
Yeah. And it can't be, I'm not a believer in, a little bit of sugar makes the pill go down. If it's something that you're not enjoying, then listen to your heart and listen to your soul and don't do it. There's nothing in the rule book of life that you have to consistently do something that tears you up or eats you up or isn't your joy. So marry your joy to whatever it is that you're doing and be authentic about it. And then it becomes fun and easy.
Yes, that's true. the years go, the generations before us were all about, it doesn't matter, you use sugar to get the pill to go down, or, suck it up, or all of those things. And the truth is, if we're not living from our inner joy heart space, then we're off track, and it will be hard for anybody to understand us, and it will even be harder to be happy. And our joy and our happiness is paramount if we want to have a good life, period.
I think that's a debate my father and I used to get in, a very heated debate, because my father believed, because of his generation, that work was just beans. He called it, it's just beans. You go to work every day, you have a work ethic, you do a good job, you get a paycheck, you feed your family. Your family was first, and your job was just beans. And he couldn't understand, you get paid to tell people to love what they do, and if they don't love it, to quit? How can companies tell you that? And I was like, Dad, because if you ain't happy, think anybody at work knows it? Think anybody at home knows it? Think the customers know it? Yeah, this isn't the only job on the face of the earth. And Dad, during the break, the company presidents come up to me and they go, Sheryl, thanks so much for saying that. I've been trying to get rid of that person for the last 6 months. Because, no company wants you that badly to do consistent work that you're not enjoying. It shows.
And I think it's also part of the evolution of our world. The universe in my mind is always expanding and always has been. And so the generations before us did believe that work was just the bean counters, just get the money to move on. And now in the way things are evolving and expanding, that there is an expansion, not only an understanding of what our work is and our vocation and our calling, but that we can all generate our livelihood by following our joy much more effectively than previous generations ever could understand yet. It just hadn't expanded to that yet.
Yeah, and it's almost gone the opposite direction. Now I have CEOs calling me and go, how do I deal with these digital natives, these kids that are coming in that were born with computers? They don't know how to write a thank you card. They don't respond to email. Everything is text. They don't believe anything I say. They've got to check the computer. And so now you have to go back in and you have to teach those about consistency, and about how the world does not revolve around what you want, but that there's also a sacrificial ethnicity to what you do in life, so that what you do is contribute. It's not all about you, but it makes where you're working a better place, a better company. So it's kind of funny how that pendulum has come back all the other way.
Yes, it's always swinging. So like, where are we on that scope of that pendulum, back and forth? And it's true. I see it a lot of the time. And so the consistency piece, I think, is so important, because if we want to be consistent within, so we can be consistent without, we run into people like, I'm very consistent. I do what I say I do. I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it 99% of the time. I will mess it up a lot, like anyone.
Yeah.
And I pretty much can stay on track with the things that are important. And so sometimes we run out of time, right? Because there's so many things we want to do. Like, I can make a to-do list for one afternoon thinking, I'll get this done in an hour. And if you look at it, it's 20 items long, and it'll probably take a day, not an hour. And that I call that time optimism. And so consistency helps with keeping the time optimism from getting in the way, because I can look at it and say, well, if I'm acting consistently, this isn't going to work. So it helps change timing so that it works.
Yes.
So how do you help people in the world, when you're working with companies or maybe other businesses or whatever, transcend the generations when you have that generation thing? Because you are very good at speaking to all the generations, right?
Thank you.
And we have somebody from the older generation maybe, and then we have somebody who can't write a thank you card, or maybe doesn't even know how to use script these days. How do you help bridge that gap? What would you say to somebody who's, like a young person trying to talk to an older boss or a senior or somebody, or the other way around? And what kind of ideas could you share with them to help them learn how to bridge that gap so they don't feel like, they're so disenfranchised from somebody of a different generation?
Well, I think the best tool that I use is what I call the people puzzle. If you see people as if they're puzzle pieces, you'll recognize that when you go to the store and you buy a puzzle and you throw the puzzle up on the table, not all the pieces look the same. They're all different. And so if you look at people as if they're puzzle pieces, you realize in building a puzzle, you can't leave a piece on the table. And typically that's what happens with people. You want people who think like, I want people around me who think like me, motivated like me, have the same values as me. But I can't go through life with just me. I need people who think differently. So once I introduce them to this concept of chameleon living, and what a chameleon does, we're blessed here in Florida because they're all over the place. It changes colors based on its environment. So chameleon living means that if I'm an older person and I'm dealing with a younger person, instead of the golden rule of treat people the way I want to be treated, I now have to say, what is that puzzle piece? What motivates that puzzle piece? What does that puzzle piece need? And how can I modify my communication style, my rate of speech, so that I'm talking their language? And once you do it, then it becomes fun because you see people, and I always use the DISC, the DISC. You see them and you go, oh, well, he's not a jerk. He's a DC and I'm an I. And so that's just natural oil and water. Wow. I need that person to make this company work. So how can I change? How can I modify my communication style like a chameleon to work with this person? And so that's what I do. I teach people to value each and every piece, to know what the needs and wants are, and then to live like a chameleon.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I love that. Right. And it's about the listener, and it's about, being open enough to really ask those curious questions to see where it is so that you can see where that bridge is instead of just throwing up the wall and saying, well, they're different or they don't understand me.
Exactly.
It's not always about us, even though we feel that way sometimes.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about what can people work with you? How's your work? Or are you only speaking? Do you coach people still? What kind of working things are you doing that people might be interested in? I've already said about your podcast, Get a Life Balanced.
Thank you.
An amazing podcast. And I'll be sure to put that link in the show notes. I love it. I always get excited when I see a new episode.
Thanks.
And you just told me about your new YouTube channel.
I did, because there were some people in my audience who don't have iPhones and haven't got a clue how to get to a podcast. So I made visual YouTube videos instead. So they're short. I just put up 18 of them, and it's right along with the Get a Life Balance, but it's short tips under 5 minutes on how to declutter your life, how to communicate, get people to help you in the kitchen, how not to do housework and yard work, how to get those kids out of your bed and back into their bed. So that's good. But regarding the coaching, yes, I do presentation skills coaching, sales coaching, and life balance coaching. And I do that I don't do what a lot of other speakers do. In other words, I'm not going to give you an iPad and a workbook. We're going to work face-to-face. I'm not going to throw you in a webinar. We're going to work face-to-face. And even if we're going to do it on a computer, we'll still be doing face-to-face. And they have access to me for a year. So even if they purchase a one-day intensive program, they still can call me or email me for a year. And what that does is it raises their level of confidence. That's once they get back to their work environment, when things change, something's going to be different 3 months from now. And where's Sheryl? Call me or email me. And as you can tell, I'm a pretty quick wordsmith. So if they email me or call me, within 2 sentences, I've fixed their issue, and they can go on and accomplish more things until the next time. So I do that, and I just spoke for Nannies International, so I'm still on stage speaking for groups and doing keynotes and workshops. So I'm blessed. I'm still doing what I love. I love the power of words and how you can line them up in just the right way to impact lives. And as long as I still have a voice, I'm going to do that.
Well, I know you'll have a voice for a long time, and it'll be always fun to hear all the neat things that you create and put out there and all of that kind of thing. And that's neat that you stay available for somebody for a whole year, because you're right, things do change. And I think it's more than just a good skill of wordsmithing. You are a good wordsmith, but I think your skill set is far greater than your humble self always admits to. And And it's because you really care about what you're doing and the things that matter, your authenticity that you mentioned earlier. And those things are so core to you that you wouldn't think about having it any other way, to be available and to be fully present and to listen with your heart, not just your ears, and to care about the outcome. That's all part of your authenticity, and that's all part of your great wisdom. That is a lot more than just being good with words. You are good with words, but it's much deeper than that. That's my statement. So there. Just thought I'd clear that up. Anyway, I know I'm so funny today. I'm a goofball today, but that's okay. I'm allowed to be. So is there anything that I have missed or didn't ask you that you wanted to share with all of our listeners and all of the many countries that are listening to us that I either didn't cover or that's on your heart now that you think, wow, when we hit end, I wish I would have said it?
I think when I do my training programs, to me, it's very important that you leave a legacy with the people you love. And so I always challenge everyone to leave the evening to close their eyes with a human connection. So I challenge people, when was the last time you told your child something special that you liked about them? When was the last time you called your mother? Remember that person who gave you your life last time you connected with that person and just said thank you. I don't think there's enough human connection today with all of the technology. It's short and sweet, and I love Facebook, but my point is, close each evening on a human connection. If you can do that, it's going to make you healthier. It's going to make you more appreciative, and you're going to sleep better because you sleep with gratitude. That's it.
Oh, that is so amazing. And so there you go. Leave your legacy by being connected to other human beings in a really meaningful way. Thank you, Sheryl, for being on the show today. Thank you so much for your time.
I'm blessed to do it. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it was really fun. And so now remember, everybody, to keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you. You're a rock star. Go out there and shine your light because the world really needs it. And until the next episode, be well.
Thanks for tuning in to Someone Gets Me. To find out more, please visit Dianne's website at MissDianneAllen.com. That's MissDianneAllen.com. Be sure to take a second and subscribe to the show and share with anyone that you think may benefit. Until next time, remember the world needs your special gift. So let your light shine.